So, is Bitcoin too difficult for the average person? I saw a video on a couple of content creators talking about this subject matter, and I wanted to make a video on this because I do feel I do have an opinion on this, but uh, I thought it was interesting to actually go through it and see and share it um, with you guys, the audience, to see how you feel about it as well. Because from my perspective, Bitcoin is actually very difficult. Not extremely, I won't say it's extremely difficult, but it is very difficult for the average person. And that might put them off. And I know this from personal experience for myself and other people that I've told Bitcoin about and explained to them the entire process and what to do. So buying Bitcoin in of itself and putting it into a hot wallet and learning about what a Bitcoin address is seems to be difficult enough. And when you introduce the whole idea of cold storage, right, that just, you know, takes them on the edge. So, the average person doesn't understand the amount of precautions Bitcoiners usually take when they want to protect uh, when they want to protect their stack. So the average person is put off by the entire process because, let's face it, just learning it might take a lot of time. Yes, it is very difficult um, to for the average person, but you have to actually realize the trade-offs. What are you gaining from all of this difficulty and education when it comes to Bitcoin? You're gaining freedom, right? So the way I see it is, think about the slave in United States during the 1800s, right, or the 1700s, before Abraham Lincoln, before the Civil War, before slavery was abolished. Um, Slaves, if you think about what a slave actually is, what a slave's daily life is he just works on the field. They just do what the master tells them to do. They don't have to worry about clothes. They don't have to worry about food. They don't have to worry about protection. The master provides all of that. And in return, they need to do what the master tells them to do. And if you disobey, you get punished by the master. Now, when slavery was abolished, all of a sudden you have a slave who, where everything was done for him, suddenly needs to provide and do everything for themselves. So it's difficult. They don't know how to read, so they have no education, and their skills is that of a slave. So how does a slave feed himself, right? How does the slave um, find food? How does the slave find clothes? How does the slave earn, right? Maybe you can earn by working on someone else's farm, but the reality is, the slave at the time was incredibly comfortable just living under the master's thumb because they don't have to worry. It's comfortable, it's easy, right? Suddenly, if you're given freedom, now you are bearing the responsibility of actually taking care of yourself, right? Which is hard and difficult. Think of the child, right? Living in the parents under the parents living in the parents' house, and when they become adults, they need to find rent. They need to find an apartment, pay rent. They need to buy their own groceries. They need to go work. If they don't work, they can't pay their bills. So adulthood is incredibly difficult compared to when you were a child, when everything was done for you. So Bitcoin, at the end of the day, is freedom. Freedom from what? Freedom from all of your money being held by a bank who's taking custody of that. And I don't want to get into the whole custody of banks, because banks are not technically custodying your money. They owe you that money. So, let's just, for the sake of this discussion, let's just say They owe you that money and they have it. All right. You need permission to use that money. Right. It's no different than a child asking permission for their allowance from their parents. The parents can say no. The parents can say yes. The banks can say no. The banks can say yes to your money. So the trade off, right, is freedom, and freedom is a heavy price. You have to learn it, right? Think about the way we use the internet as well. Social media, websites that we tend to go on, YouTube, all of these websites, they have a server, which means someone is storing all these data for us. And we use, clients like our phones or our laptops to access those data, right? So it's a someone is, it's I don't want to use custody, but it's like cloud computing, right? So cloud computing basically is someone is taking custody of our own data, of our data. So if you want to say, for example, go on something like Nostr. Nostr is not that. Nostr has several different relays, but you have the option of actually running your own relay, and that is, your own server. That server can actually be run by another computer, which is not that different from cloud computing. But you could have your own server, right? So, say for example, your Bitcoin node, you could run the Bitcoin node from your own server. So sovereign computing, when you're running your data from your local machine, that would be freedom. And it costs money, it costs energy, it costs, the hardware that you're using costs money. It needs to be efficient enough to run these things. So freedom comes at a cost. It's not simple. So the whole idea of Bitcoin and what the ethos of the selling point of Bitcoin is that sovereignty, and that requires education, right? So I've seen someone saying things like, oh, banks are so much easier, and so the average person will never look at banks. Well, you have to ask yourself, what's it worth being free and not be a slave? That's really what you got to ask yourself at the end of the day. And I realize that if I have a desire to do something, I'm going to do what it takes to get it. Do what it takes. Like if it took a heavy amount of work, if it was easy to be a billionaire, if it was easy to be a millionaire, if anything of value was easy, everyone would have done it. If it's easy, it's not worth it. If it's difficult, it's worth it. And freedom is difficult. So ask yourself, what's it worth? Right? The other layer, by the way, to Bitcoin is not just about self-custody. It's also running your own node. And that also took me a long time to learn that. I remember weeks just thinking about it. Like, how am I going to do it? I remember when I first heard someone saying that I need to run my own node, I laughed at it. Like, why would I do that? Like, why? I'm not a technical person in the least. Like, I'm the last person to be talking about technical language and aspects of things. But now I feel like I am so technical savvy in some ways, because I have failed and I've thought of how to do things, and I thought of many different ways, and I failed in all these ways, and I finally stumbled upon the Start9 servers. And I was like, oh, this is so much easier than what I was thinking, because I thought I needed to run lectures on my computer. How am I going to do that? Python, but Start9 was just plug and play. So all I had to do was figure out how to install Start9 on my computer, and that was a far easier journey. So, at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, yes, it's hard, it's difficult, but every journey that's worth it at the end of the day, so it's going to be difficult. So you just have to ask yourself, is it worth it? And if it's not worth it, then no, right? You can, you can just keep doing what you're doing. But if freedom is worth the education and all of this complexity, and that's what Bitcoin is. Anyway, that's all I wanted to share. You can subscribe if you want to subscribe. I don't like to force people to do things. You could like and share if you want, because at the end of the day, you can do whatever the hell you want to do because you are free. Well, if you wish to, in this case. Until next time.